The world runs on Indian engineering. These are the companies that keep the world running in medicine, machines, food, software, and so much more. The world needs them every single day. Yet most of the world does not know their names. Even fewer know they are Indian. The world has not needed to know their names because they have simply always been there, quietly indispensable, technically irreplaceable, and entirely uninterested in asking for credit. The company that keeps the human race alive, Serum Institute of India. 65% of the children alive on Earth today have received at least one vaccine manufactured in India. Not some children, not just children in Asia, but roughly 2 out of every 3 children born over the past 4 decades who receive protection against polio, measles, diphtheria, or hepatitis B received a dose that passed through a facility owned by the Serum Institute of India. That is not a small achievement. That is the most consequential single fact in the history of modern public health, and it belongs to a company that most of the world cannot name. The Serum Institute is the world's largest vaccine manufacturer by volume. Every year it produces more than 1.5 billion doses, more than any American company, more than any European consortium, more than any Chinese state enterprise. 1.5 billion doses from a campus in Maharashtra delivered to 170 nations. Cyrus Poonawalla founded the company in 1966 on the family's horse racing stud farm in Pune. The family bred horses for racing. Poonawalla noticed that biological laboratories elsewhere were extracting serum from horses to produce antitoxins for tetanus. He had the horses, he had the land. He had the conviction that India did not need to import what it could manufacture. The company began by extracting antitoxins from retired racehorses. Over the following decades, it became the primary institutional supplier for the World Health Organization and UNICEF, the foundation on which global immunization programs were built. Long before the COVID-19 pandemic forced the world to take notice of Pune, the infrastructure of global childhood health already ran through this campus. Polio eradication, measles control, tetanus prevention across 170 nations. The WHO and UNICEF were entirely dependent on the Serum Institute for the biological materials that made those programs possible. The West was significantly dependent on this company. In 2012, the Serum Institute deepened its technical position by acquiring Bilthoven Biologicals from the Dutch government, a transaction that gave it access to one of the most closely guarded production processes in global medicine, the technology to manufacture the injectable polio vaccine. That technology had been under the control of the Netherlands government precisely because of how critical it was. The Serum Institute now held it. This is a story of an Indian company becoming so technically embedded in the infrastructure of human survival that the global immunization system cannot function without it. That is a different category of achievement entirely. The king of global agriculture, Mahindra and Mahindra. Mahindra is the only tractor brand in the world to have won both the Deming Application Prize and the Japan Quality Medal. Both of them. These are not marketing awards. They are the 2 most rigorous manufacturing quality certifications that exist anywhere on Earth, established by a country, Japan, whose industrial culture holds manufacturing excellence to standards that no other nation exceeds. If someone asked an average American farmer who makes the most tractors in the world, the answer would almost certainly be John Deere. That answer is wrong. By volume, by the sheer number of units manufactured and delivered in a year, the undisputed #1 tractor manufacturer in the world is Mahindra. Not the largest in India, not the largest in Asia, the largest anywhere on Earth, having produced over 7 million tractors in the company's history and consistently leading global volume every year. The most powerful name in the most important agricultural supply chain in the world belongs to a company headquartered in Maharashtra. What makes this dominance more remarkable is the market where Mahindra chose to prove it, not in India, where the brand was already established, in America. In the country where John Deere is not just a brand but a cultural institution, where tractor loyalty passes through generations like a family name, Mahindra entered and captured a significant share of the utility tractor segment. The strategy was precise. American tractor manufacturers had been moving toward computerization and electronic complexity. Modern John Deere tractors carry sensors, GPS integration, and proprietary software systems that can only be serviced by authorized dealers. They are impressive machines and expensive to maintain. A mid-sized farmer who needed a durable, powerful, simple tractor had fewer and fewer options from the legacy American brands. Mahindra offered one: durable, affordable, serviceable. The Indian company that captured the American heartland did not do it by cutting corners on quality. It did it by delivering quality that the incumbents had stopped prioritizing. The company that broke Western Pharma's monopoly, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. The Western pharmaceutical industry's power rests on one legal instrument above all others: the patent. A pharmaceutical patent gives a company the exclusive right to manufacture and sell a drug, sometimes for 20 years or more. During that window, there is no price competition and no alternative supplier. The patent is the monopoly, and the monopoly decides who can afford to get better. For millions of ordinary people in America and across the world, that system meant one thing: the medicine their doctor prescribed definitely existed, but they simply could not afford it. In the late 1990s, an Indian pharmaceutical company decided that was not acceptable. Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, founded in 1984 by Reddy in Hyderabad, had spent its first decade building genuine pharmaceutical manufacturing capability. But the leadership understood something deeper than commercial ambition. The most life-changing medicines in the world were sitting behind patent walls that ordinary people could not cross. The U.S. pharmaceutical market, the largest and most influential on earth, set prices that the rest of the world followed. If those prices could be challenged, millions of lives could change. Dr. Reddy's built a team of pharmaceutical chemists who studied the patents protecting blockbuster drugs to manufacture the same molecule independently, legally, and at a price that a family on a modest income could actually pay. That is what generic medicine is. A sick person's ability to recover should not depend on the size of their bank account. The landmark challenge to the patent protecting omeprazole, an ulcer medication that millions of Americans needed and many could not afford at branded prices, opened the American generic drug market in ways that benefited not a corporation, but patients. The price dropped. The medicine reached people it had not reached before. That victory opened the door for every other Indian generic drug company to enter the American market. And every time another Indian company walked through that door, the price of medicine fell a little further. Dr. Reddy's was also the first Asian pharmaceutical company outside Japan to list on the New York Stock Exchange. This is why the cost of medication for millions of Americans is lower than it would otherwise be. Not because a government regulator intervened, because an Indian company looked at a system that was pricing sick people out of their own treatment, decided that was wrong, went to court, and changed it. The most powerful refinery on earth, Reliance Industries, Jamnagar. There is a patch of coastline in Gujarat where the mathematics of global energy become uncomfortable for anyone who assumes that the world's most critical industrial infrastructure sits in the West. The Jamnagar refinery, owned and operated by Reliance Industries, is the largest and most complex single-site petroleum refinery in the world. Not the largest in India, not the largest in Asia, the largest anywhere on Earth. It processes over 1.24 million barrels of crude oil every single day, without interruption, supplying refined petroleum products to markets across the globe. If Jamnagar stopped tomorrow, the supply-side effects would reach Europe, South Korea, Japan, and the United States within days. The scale of the facility makes more sense when viewed as two refineries that share a site. The original Jamnagar refinery was commissioned in 1999. A second expansion facility came online in 2008. Together, they represent the largest concentration of petroleum refining capacity on the planet. But the competitive advantage is not only scale, it is complexity. Jamnagar processes the world's most difficult, high-sulfur crude oils that less sophisticated refineries cannot handle, and converts them into clean, specification-grade products that European and American regulatory standards require. The facility does what many Western refineries operating on aging infrastructure cannot. There is a detail attached to this facility that no Western energy executive who visits it ever forgets. The arid wasteland surrounding the refinery land, degraded by the scale of the construction itself, has been transformed into Asia's largest mango orchard. Reliance planted over 100,000 mango trees around the facility perimeter. They produce a proprietary brand of mangoes that are now exported globally. While Western energy companies hold press conferences about their environmental responsibilities, one Indian industrial complex has already planted 100,000 trees. That is a statement about what ethical building seriously looks like. The garage that changed the price of cancer treatment, Biocon. The story begins with 10,000 rupees and a papaya. In 1978, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw started Biocon in the garage of a rented house in Bangalore. She had a science degree and almost nothing else. No laboratory, no investors, no equipment worth speaking of. Her first project was extracting an enzyme from papayas to sell to breweries. That was the beginning. What she built from that beginning gave cancer patients around the world a chance they did not previously have. Here is the problem she was solving. Certain life-saving drugs for cancer, for diabetes, for serious autoimmune conditions are not made from chemicals. They are grown from living cells in extremely precise biological processes that take years to master. Because they are so difficult to make, Western pharmaceutical companies held near complete control over their production for decades. And because they held that control, they charged what they chose. A cancer drug that a patient needed to survive cost more than most families in the world earn in a year. The science existed. The medicine existed. Millions of people simply could not afford it. Biocon's answer was to learn how to make those same drugs with the same biological precision, meeting the same standards that the US and European regulators demand, and sell them at a price that ordinary people could actually pay. That is not a shortcut. Passing the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's approval process for a biologic drug is one of the hardest things a pharmaceutical company can do anywhere in the world. Biocon passed it. Biocon earned it. When Biocon's medicines entered the American and European markets, the price of cancer treatment fell. Patients who had been told the medicine existed but was unaffordable could suddenly access it. Families who had been calculating whether treatment was financially survivable had a different number to work with. Western pharmaceutical companies that had held these prices in place for years were now competing with a company that had started in a garage in Bangalore with 10,000 rupees and a papaya. That is what Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw built. One of the most quietly powerful, deeply human, and genuinely world-changing companies the modern world has ever produced. The company that beat Silicon Valley, Zoho. The formula for building a global software company is well established. Find a venture capitalist willing to fund aggressive growth. Accept the money. Hire at scale. Spend heavily on marketing. Accept losses for years while building market share, and then go public. This is the system. Sridhar Vembu from India looked at that system and declined. Zoho Corporation competes directly against Salesforce, Microsoft, and Google Workspace, three of the most capitalized technology companies in human history. It offers a complete suite of business software that covers customer relationship management, email, accounting, human resources, project management, and document collaboration. Over 100 million users globally rely on it. The company has achieved a valuation estimated at over $12 billion and maintains profit margins of approximately 40%, a level of profitability that most technology businesses, burning capital to chase growth, would consider structurally impossible. Not $1 of external investment has been accepted. Not one share has been sold to a venture fund. Not one board seat has been given to an outside investor. Sridhar Vembu owns the company. He controls its direction entirely, and he has made choices with it that no publicly listed, investor-accountable company could survive making. The most visible of those choices is geography. While every Western technology company has spent decades clustering in cities with expensive real estate and fierce competition for a small pool of engineering graduates, Zoho has been moving in the opposite direction. Zoho schools in rural Tamil Nadu take high school graduates, not IIT alumni, not holders of engineering degrees, not the credentialed elite of Indian technical education, and train them to write world-class software. The graduates join Zoho's engineering workforce. They are paid well. They live near their families. They build software that competes with the products of companies whose employees earn 10 times as much in cities they cannot afford. In 2023 through 2025, The Indian government migrated all 1.2 million central government employee email accounts to Zoho Mail. That is not only a procurement decision, that is a statement about whose software India trusts with the communications of its own state. Zoho is not beating Silicon Valley by imitation. It is beating Silicon Valley by operating from values it believes in. 7. How India rescued British luxury, Tata Motors. In 2008, Ford Motor Company needed to sell two British luxury brands it had spent years trying to make profitable and had failed. Jaguar and Land Rover were losing money. The asking price was $2.3 billion. Then from India, Tata Motors came to the rescue. The Western business press responded with skepticism that in retrospect reads as condescension. Tata Motors was a company that made trucks and buses for Indian roads and had just launched the Nano, a car designed to be affordable for ordinary Indian families. The idea that this company would now own Jaguar and Land Rover, two of Britain's most treasured automotive symbols, struck commentators across Europe and America as almost implausible. One prominent analysis described it as asking a bicycle manufacturer to run a Formula One team. The condescension was loud, confident, and almost universal. Tata Motors did not argue with this media coverage. It got to work. The strategy was precise in one critical dimension. Tata did not Indianize the brands. Jaguar remained British. Land Rover remained British. The design language, the engineering heritage, the Coventry and Solihull manufacturing presence, all of it remained. What changed was the financial commitment. Tata injected billions of pounds into the research and development budgets that Ford had been reducing. It funded the engineering programs that Ford had been deferring. It trusted the British engineers who had been operating under financial uncertainty to do what they were always capable of doing when properly supported. Within 4 years of the acquisition, Jaguar Land Rover was not just profitable, it had become the single most important profit contributor to the Tata Motors Group. In years when Indian automotive markets were difficult, JLR's global revenue carried the parent company. The British brands, under Indian ownership and Indian capital, performed better commercially than they had under American ownership. Tata Motors did not just challenge the assumption that East needed West, it completely destroyed it. Completely, publicly, permanently, and with two of Britain's most beloved brands as the proof. 8. The company that builds what no one else can. Larsen Toubro, heavy engineering. There is a category of industrial object that most people will never see, cannot easily describe, and cannot imagine the manufacturing process for. These are pressure vessels, steel structures designed to contain substances at temperatures and pressures so extreme that most materials would fail within seconds of exposure. Hydrocrackers. Urea reactors. The critical components inside the world's largest oil refineries. They can weigh thousands of tons. They are the single heaviest pieces of equipment in any industrial facility, and the engineering required to produce them is so demanding that only a handful of facilities on Earth have ever been capable of making them. Larsen Toubro's heavy engineering division at Hazira, Gujarat, is the most advanced manufacturing facility in the world for these components. When the world's largest energy companies operating refineries in Saudi Arabia, the United States, the Netherlands, and South Korea need to commission new hydrocracking capacity, the order frequently arrives in Gujarat. Not because L&T is the cheapest option. These components are not chosen on price. They are chosen because a failed pressure vessel in an operating refinery is not a warranty claim. It is a catastrophe measured in human lives and billions of dollars. The companies that commission them choose their manufacturer on one criterion above all others: certainty of quality. L&T earned that certainty over 4 decades. The Hazira facility has the full stack of capabilities that this work requires. The metallurgical expertise to work with the grades of steel that high-pressure applications demand, the welding qualification programs that satisfy every major global regulatory body, and critically, the logistics infrastructure to load finished components weighing thousands of tons onto heavy-lift vessels for delivery anywhere in the world. Western energy companies that have publicly committed to reducing dependencies on specific manufacturing sources in sensitive categories have found, in this particular area, that there is no credible alternative to go to. The knowledge is in Hazira. The infrastructure is in Hazira. The decades of accumulated technical learning that make this work possible are in Hazira. L&T does not advertise. It does not need to. The most powerful energy companies in the world already know where to call. 9. When NASA needs to protect its data. Druva. Every generation has a handful of companies that see the future before anyone else does. While everyone else is defending the old way of doing things, these companies are already building the new one. By the time the world catches up, it is too late to ignore them. They are already everywhere. They are already essential. Druva, born in Pune, India in 2008, is one of those companies. The enterprise data backup and protection market in 2008 was a hardware market. Companies bought expensive physical appliances from established American vendors, stored them on site, paid specialist staff to maintain them, and lived with the limitations of physical infrastructure, including the risk that a flood, a fire, or a ransomware attack could destroy the backup at the same time as the data it was supposed to protect. The incumbents were profitable. Their customers were locked in. The system had no obvious reason to change. Druva built a completely different architecture, 100% cloud native. No on-site hardware, no physical appliances, no infrastructure for the customer to maintain. The data protection lived in the cloud and was managed entirely through software. This was not a variation on what the incumbents were selling. It was a direct architectural rejection of their entire product philosophy. 75 of the Fortune 500 companies now use Druva to protect their data. NASA, Pfizer, Marriott. These are not organizations that accept unknown vendors for mission-critical data. These are organizations with more to lose from data loss than almost any others on Earth. In 2026, for the second consecutive year, Druva was named a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for backup and data protection platforms, the equivalent of being named the most trusted company in its category. The American incumbents who had dominated this market for decades watched a startup from Pune achieve the designation they had been defending for years. Druva simply built a better architecture and waited for the world to realize it needed one. These are not separate stories. It is the story of what happens when the world assumes greatness only flows one way from west to east. And India proves that assumption completely wrong. These Indian companies were building to be needed. Need does not fade away. What these companies have quietly built over decades is a presence in the modern world that is now impossible to ignore.